The Vrexian coalition had spent approximately 14,000 years mapping the dangerous sectors of the galaxy, and in all that time they had developed one universal truth that every spacefaring species agreed upon: never, under any circumstances, spend the night on a frontier planet without at least 3 redundant security systems and a valid last will and testament. The planet Keswick 7 exemplified exactly why this rule existed. Beautiful during daylight hours, with its amber forests and crystalline rivers, the place transformed after sunset into what the expedition's risk assessment file diplomatically called a statistical nightmare for organic life forms. The native predators possessed the charming combination of pack-hunting intelligence, thermal vision, and an apparently insatiable appetite for anything that breathed oxygen. Previous expeditions had lost entire teams to these creatures. The survivors reported hearing their colleagues' screams echoing through the forest, which was precisely the kind of testimonial that made Keswick 7 a 3-hazard pay destination. The current geological survey expedition consisted of 5 members, each representing their respective species' finest, or at least their respective species' most desperate for credits individuals. Zeph, a Colaxian, whose exoskeleton gleamed like polished obsidian, served as team leader primarily because his species had inherited bureaucratic authority from some ancient treaty nobody could quite remember. His compound eyes could detect movement in near-total darkness, which would have been useful if he weren't absolutely terrified of using this ability after sunset. Alongside him stood Vrix and Morn, twin Deltuvian researchers whose bioluminescent skin patterns reflected their current emotional state, which lately had been various shades of deeply concerned purple. Rounding out the group was Quellin, a floating Nethari whose gaseous form rippled inside a containment suit, providing commentary that nobody had requested but everyone had to endure. They had established camp in a clearing that their tactical software had designated as least likely to result in immediate death, which was about as optimistic as the algorithm could manage on Keswick 7. The sun hung low on the horizon, painting everything in shades of orange that would have been picturesque if everyone weren't calculating how many minutes of safety remained. "The human still hasn't arrived," Vrix announced, his skin flickering between purple and red, which translated roughly to worried and annoyed. Zeph checked his communication device. The transport confirmed drop-off 30 minutes ago. Coordinates were correct. Typical, Quellin's voice resonated from within his suit. Humans have no sense of urgency. Their homeworld had exactly one apex predator species themselves, so they lack proper respect for the food chain. As if summoned by the criticism, a figure emerged from the tree line, walking with the kind of casual gait that suggested either supreme confidence or complete ignorance. The human designation Marcus Chen, according to the manifest, stood shorter than Zeph, but carried equipment that seemed to violate several principles of efficient packing. Instead of the standard-issue emergency beacon and defensive pulse rifle, he had what appeared to be coils of rope, several metal containers, and objects that defied immediate classification. "Evening, folks," Marcus said, dropping his pack with a heavy thud. "Sorry for the delay. Stopped to check out some of the local flora. Absolutely fascinating root systems." Zeph's mandibles clicked in what might have been disbelief. "You were examining plants. The sun sets in 47 minutes. "Yep, noticed that." Marcus stretched, joints popping audibly. "Nice spot you picked. Good sight lines." Morn's bioluminescence shifted to a confused yellow-green. "You understand the danger protocols for this planet, correct? The night predators have a 93% kill rate for unprotected organic beings." "Raid the briefing." Sounded intense. Marcus began unpacking his gear with infuriating calm. You guys got your defenses set up already. Defenses was an understatement for what the alien crew had constructed. Over the past 2 hours, they had erected a perimeter that would have made a military installation jealous. Energy barriers hummed at 3-meter intervals, creating an overlapping field that could theoretically withstand a plasma cannon. Motion sensors formed a secondary ring, calibrated to detect anything larger than a small insect. Automated turrets stood at cardinal points, their targeting systems linked to thermal imaging. Deeper within, emergency teleportation pads waited on standby, ready to yank the team to orbit at the first sign of catastrophic breach. Zeph gestured to their fortifications with obvious pride. Military-grade protection. The barriers alone cost more than most planetary mining operations. You brought defensive equipment, I assume. Marcus surveyed their setup, nodding slowly. That's quite a setup. Very thorough. He pulled out what looked like a metal cooking pot, some wire, and a handful of springs. I've got my own system. Quellin's containment suit vibrated with what might have been laughter. You plan to defend yourself with kitchenware. How delightfully primitive. Typical, Quellin's voice resonated from within his suit. Humans have no sense of urgency. Their homeworld had exactly one apex predator species themselves, so they lack proper respect for the food chain. As if summoned by the criticism, a figure emerged from the tree line, walking with the kind of casual gait that suggested either supreme confidence or complete ignorance. The human designation Marcus Chen, according to the manifest, stood shorter than Zeph, but carried equipment that seemed to violate several principles of efficient packing. Instead of the standard-issue emergency beacon and defensive pulse rifle, he had what appeared to be coils of rope, several metal containers, and objects that defied immediate classification. "Evening, folks," Marcus said, dropping his pack with a heavy thud. "Sorry for the delay. Stopped to check out some of the local flora. Absolutely fascinating root systems." Zeph's mandibles clicked in what might have been disbelief. "You were examining plants. The sun sets in 47 minutes. Yep, noticed that." Marcus stretched, joints popping audibly. "Nice spot you picked. Good sight lines." Morn's bioluminescence shifted to a confused yellow-green. "You understand the danger protocols for this planet, correct? The night predators have a 93% kill rate for unprotected organic beings." "Raid the briefing." Sounded intense. Marcus began unpacking his gear with infuriating calm. "You guys got your defenses set up already." Defenses was an understatement for what the alien crew had constructed. Over the past 2 hours, they had erected a perimeter that would have made a military installation jealous. Energy barriers hummed at 3-meter intervals, creating an overlapping field that could theoretically withstand a plasma cannon. Motion sensors formed a secondary ring, calibrated to detect anything larger than a small insect. Automated turrets stood at cardinal points, their targeting systems linked to thermal imaging. Deeper within, emergency teleportation pads waited on standby, ready to yank the team to orbit at the first sign of catastrophic breach. Zeph gestured to their fortifications with obvious pride. Military-grade protection. The barriers alone cost more than most planetary mining operations. "You brought defensive equipment, I assume." Marcus surveyed their setup, nodding slowly. "That's quite a setup. Very thorough." He pulled out what looked like a metal cooking pot, some wire, and a handful of springs. "I've got my own system." Quellin's containment suit vibrated with what might have been laughter. "You plan to defend yourself with kitchenware. How delightfully primitive." Marcus ate his questionable stew, occasionally glancing at the darkening tree line with the interest one might show a mildly engaging documentary. Full darkness arrived like a curtain falling. The forest became a wall of black, broken only by the camp's lights and the ominous glow of alien eyes reflecting in the distance. One pair of eyes, then three, then seven. The predators of Keswick 7 had arrived for dinner, and the menu was anyone foolish enough to be outside after dark. The creatures were impressive, even Zeph had to admit. Each stood roughly 2 meters at the shoulder, with muscular frames built for explosive speed. Their heads featured too many teeth, arranged in ways that suggested evolution had been showing off. Thermal imaging showed their body temperatures spiking as they prepared to hunt, metabolism increasing, muscles warming, predatory instincts activating. 15 contacts, Vrex reported, his voice barely steady. Surrounding our position, classic pack formation. The automated turrets tracked targets, ready to fire on Zeph's command. The energy barriers intensified, consuming power at alarming rates. Emergency protocols stood ready to execute. Marcus finished his stew, wiped the container clean, and stood with a satisfied sigh. Well, that hit the spot. I'm going to turn in. Early start tomorrow, right? 4 alien faces, or face equivalents, stared at him in absolute incomprehension. Turn in. Quellen's suit trembled. There are apex predators surrounding us. 15 of the deadliest creatures on this planet, and you're going to sleep. Yeah, I'm pretty beat. Long day. Marcus walked to his sleeping roll, laid out near the camp's center, and began removing his boots. You guys should get some rest too. We've got that mineral survey at dawn. The human has experienced a psychological break, Morn announced clinically. Stress-induced denial of reality. Should we sedate him? A roar erupted from the forest, a sound that bypassed conscious thought and triggered every prey instinct evolution had installed. The predators were announcing their presence, coordinating their attack, promising violence. Marcus paused in arranging his sleeping roll. Oh, they're loud tonight. Anyway, good night, folks. He lay down, pulled a thermal blanket over himself, and closed his eyes. The aliens stared. The predators roared. The humans' breathing slowed toward sleep. This is insane, Zeph whispered. He's going to get us all killed with his recklessness. The first predator made its move, a massive specimen that charged from the northeastern quadrant. Sensors screamed alerts. Turrets swiveled, fingers hovered over weapon triggers. The creature hit Marcus's first trap at full sprint. The cooking pot, buried and concealed, had been filled with a mixture Marcus had prepared, something slippery, something sticky, and something that smelled absolutely foul. The predator's front legs plunged into it, and momentum did the rest. 200 kilograms of apex predator went tumbling, sliding, rolling through the dirt while making sounds no creature should make while maintaining dignity. It scrambled upright, covered in Marcus's mystery substance, and immediately began a frantic attempt to clean itself, clearly disturbed by whatever unholy combination now coated its fur. A second predator, learning nothing from its companion's mistake, approached from the west. It triggered the spring trap. The carefully positioned branch, loaded with tension, snapped upward with remarkable force and caught the creature directly under the jaw. Not enough to seriously injure, but certainly enough to surprise. The predator yelped, actually yelped, and backpedaled directly into a tree. The third trap proved the most entertaining. A predator, attempting a stealthy approach from the south, tripped the ankle wire. The container overhead, filled with a mixture Marcus had described as aromatic deterrent, dumped its entire contents onto the creature. The resulting smell made even the humans' allies wince from inside their protective barriers. The predator made a sound between a howl and a retch, then bolted into the forest, presumably to find the nearest water source and possibly reconsider its career choices. Through all of this, Marcus snored gently. The pack's coordination deteriorated rapidly. Predators that had been confident apex hunters suddenly faced an enemy that didn't fight fair, didn't follow the rules, and apparently deployed cookware as weaponry. Another trap triggered, then another. Springs, wires, containers and substances combined in ways that were less lethal defense and more humiliating inconvenience. One predator, attempting to circle around the traps, managed to get its head stuck in a loop of rope. Another triggered a mechanism that pelted it with small rocks, not dangerous, just annoying and unexpected. A third discovered that stepping on a certain patch of ground resulted in a loud clanging noise that terrified it more than any weapon blast. Zeph watched his threat assessment displays go haywire. They're retreating. Indeed, the pack was withdrawing, not in organized fashion, but in the scattered confusion of predators who had expected an easy meal and instead found themselves subjects in some kind of elaborate practical joke. They regrouped at the forest's edge, and through the sensors the crew could detect what might have been a packed discussion. Probably something along the lines of, "Is food really worth this indignity?" The consensus appeared to be no. The predators melted back into the forest, leaving behind only the evidence of their humiliation, scattered traps, mysterious stains, and what might have been predator pride. Silence fell over the camp. The alien crew remained at high alert, weapons ready, unable to process what they had witnessed. Marcus continued sleeping, undisturbed. The night passed with agonizing slowness for everyone except the human. Vrix and Morn took turns on watch, though nothing else approached the camp. Quellin spent the hours muttering calculations about probability and statistical impossibilities. Zeph stared at his tactical displays, watching them show nothing, which was somehow more disturbing than showing threats. Dawn arrived with the subtlety of a stage curtain rising. Golden light filtered through the amber forest, and Keswick 7 transformed back into the beautiful survey location it pretended to be during safe hours. Marcus sat up, stretched, and yawned. Morning. Everyone sleep okay? 4 exhausted, traumatized aliens turned to stare at him. Vrix's bioluminescence had settled into a grey shade that didn't appear in any emotional chart. We spent the night in combat readiness while you demonstrated the most reckless behavior any of us have witnessed. The predators, Morn added, his skin now a confused plaid pattern, were repelled by cooking equipment and rope. This violates approximately 17 principles of predator-prey dynamics. Quellin's suit vibrated with agitation. You could have been killed. We could have been killed. Your primitive traps shouldn't have worked against evolved apex predators. Marcus began packing his sleeping roll. Oh, the traps. Yeah, they worked fine. Did the predators give you trouble after the first few? Bears. Zeph clicked his mandibles rapidly. What are bears? Big predators on Earth. We have a saying about them and camping. Marcus collected his trap components, examining each for reuse. You don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun the other guy. But there was no other guy, Quellin protested. Only us. Exactly. Marcus grinned. You guys had all those defenses, all that expensive equipment, all that energy. The predators took one look at your setup and thought, that seems like work. Then they checked out my camp. He held up a spring mechanism and found out that while I might be easier to reach, I'm way too annoying to bother with. Zeph's compound eyes tried to process this logic. You made yourself irritating on purpose. Cost-benefit analysis from the predator's perspective. Your barriers would take effort to breach, but I would take patience to deal with. Predators are lazy. They want easy meals, not frustration and weird smells. So they looked at both options and decided that maybe they weren't that hungry after all. Marcus shouldered his pack. Earth doesn't have the biggest predators or the best technology, but we've got thousands of years of experience being annoying enough to survive. It's kind of our specialty. Morn's bioluminescence cycled through several colors before settling on something that might have been reluctant respect. You gambled all our lives on predators choosing not to be bothered. Not a gamble if you understand the predators. Marcus started walking toward the survey site. Every species wants the same thing. Maximum reward, minimum effort. I just made sure the effort outweighed the reward. Plus those traps are reusable. Your energy barriers are draining power cells that cost a fortune. Quellin's gaseous form swirled thoughtfully. So while we spent resources on prevention, you spent pocket change on deterrence, and got a full night's sleep. Marcus looked back at his exhausted colleagues. Look, I get it. Your species had different evolutionary paths. You developed better technology, better weapons, better defenses. But humans, we survived by being the thing that other predators looked at and thought, you know what, not worth it. We're the galaxy's equivalent of that one food dish that technically won't kill you but tastes just bad enough that you'd rather stay hungry. The survey work proceeded under Keswick 7's pleasant morning sun. The alien crew members functioned on stimulants and pride, while Marcus hummed tunelessly and collected geological samples. That evening, as they prepared camp for their second night, something interesting happened. Zeph approached Marcus with a coil of wire. Vrix and Morn carried springs and containers. Even Quellin had procured some rope equivalent. Perhaps, Zeph said carefully, you could demonstrate the proper construction of these traps. Marcus smiled. Sure thing. First rule, predators have dignity. Take it away, and they'll usually take themselves away too. By sunset, the camp featured both the aliens' sophisticated defense grid and a perimeter of human-designed annoyance mechanisms. The energy barriers hummed at reduced power, saving costs. The traps sat ready, springs loaded, and containers filled with substances that promised humiliation rather than harm. Night fell. The predators returned, saw the camp, recognized the setup from the previous evening, and apparently decided they had better things to do. They departed within minutes, their roars somehow sounding more like complaints than threats. The alien crew slept that night, taking shifts but actually resting during off hours. Marcus, naturally, slept through everything again. When they returned to the orbital station 3 days later, their report caused quite a stir. The methodology section, where Marcus described his annoyance-based defense strategy, was flagged by multiple departments as either brilliant or insane. The Vrexian Coalition's survival protocols were eventually updated. The new guidelines included an appendix titled Alternative Deterrence Methods, when being irritating is more effective than being armed. It became required reading, though most species added footnotes, indicating they'd stick with energy barriers. Thank you very much. Marcus received a commendation and a reputation as the human who had defeated apex predators with cookware and spite. He seemed unbothered by the fame, mostly because he was usually asleep when people tried to interview him. Somewhere in the galactic archives, updated next to Keswick 7's danger assessment, a new note appeared. Night predators remain lethal. However, they appear to have standards about what constitutes worthwhile prey. Humans apparently fall below these standards. Further research recommended, though researchers should bring rope and containers of unknown substances, just in case. The galaxy had spent millennia developing better weapons, stronger shields, and more sophisticated defenses against the dangers of frontier worlds. Leave it to humans to survive by being too obnoxious to eat.